And we're live. First of all, I want to start things out with this episode with a much due thank you very much for tuning in. This is the 100th episode of this little show that I started when I was 16 years old in early 2018 as a bit of a passion project, and gone through many iterations of this show. Started out with my friend Kyle. Oh, is that you hitting me with the applause? I didn't even
Yeah,
know
we
we
got some
had that.
React buttons in here. Took 100
There you
episodes to
go.
use them, so
Yeah, well, many iterations of this thing. Started out with my friend Kyle. Obviously, you came in about halfway through the run. We've had, at least in my time doing this show, we've had fantastic guests on throughout the years. First one being Dion von Moltke. We got to talk about IMSA races. We got to talk to American broadcast legends like Bob Varsha, Andrew Marriott, some other IMSA drivers like Ricky Taylor was on the show, Zach Veach. Just an incredible run for something that's been, like I said, a passion project for the past 7 years now. So, with that in mind, Stu, thank you for being here to share the 100th episode with me. We've got a lot, and I mean a lot, to discuss in the show tonight. IMSA Motul Petit Le Mans, the season is officially over for the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, unfortunately. But the IMSA offseason is not too long, and we have plenty to recap from that race. How are things going up north on this Thanksgiving evening in Canada?
well, if you're a baseball fan, it's a little bit depressing right now here in Toronto as Jays are down heavily, about to go down 2-0 in the series, and the city, you better believe that the city is focused on that. The country is focused on that. But we're not here to talk about that tonight. We're here to talk about some fantastic racing that we had take place this weekend. And man, we always talk about that. Oh, that range of how long an episode is going to be, and this one is going to be challenging to keep within that range, I think. So there was so much to talk about coming out of Petit. What a race!
Yeah, you said it first. I was talking to you. We had a bit of a watch party going on at the end of the race over on your channel on Saturday afternoon. I said this is going to be probably a long episode. Last episode, I was watching my Red Sox lose, so I guess you and I share something in common. But we'll try to keep this one to around that hour and a half that we're used to, despite the fact that we have so much to talk about. And let's just start things off right away. Let's hit it with the bullet points here, okay?
Yeah.
Road America, Road Atlanta,
I do
IMSA
that all the
WeatherTech
time.
Sports Car Championship. This was what I didn't think was possible at an IMSA race, a sellout crowd. For the
Yeah.
first time in IMSA's history of unification, that dates back to 2014. Um, Incredible stat. I mean, the 4 years that I had gone to Road Atlanta, unfortunately, this year I decided at the last minute against going for a few different reasons. But I can tell you in the past that race has been packed as it was. And talking to people who are at the race this year who have also joined me in previous years there, um, they said that there was a noticeable increase in the amount of people that you saw. You saw that shot right at the start of the IMSA feed when they showed the grid walk. It was like
Yeah.
not quite Nürburgring 24 levels of insane for how deep the grid walk went, um, but it certainly didn't feel far off.
Yeah, that was. I remember seeing that, and I tried to go and find a comparable photo to last year's because I could, like last year when I physically was there, and you were physically there as well. You could feel how packed it was, and it looked more packed. And yeah, as you said, all the reports out of it were, and indeed a sold out race. I was shocked when I heard that. I thought when they said on the broadcast that they were turning people away, I thought, oh, they're just turning people away from parking. Like they need to send them somewhere else to go park. But like we don't close the ticket sales for an IMSA race. Like that doesn't happen. And then sure enough, the track was at maximum capacity, which I don't know if we ever thought we'd see this day come, but man, pretty cool to hear that has happened. Sports car proof that sports car racing is still on an upward swing. and the trajectory looks to continue on that way for years to come. And if we keep getting races like we had at Petit Le Mans, then it's gonna be difficult to keep fans away.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the on track product in IMSA right now. You have effectively a capacity grid at this race. It was one car short of that
Yep.
54 cap. A capacity crowd now. From an on track product perspective, we're reaching a point where there's not a whole lot that IMSA can do to improve what we're seeing. So, as I said, mind blowing statistic to close out the season on an absolute high, and something they're going to have to work for or work on continuing in the future. I'll tell you one thing now. I officially would be scared to show up to an IMSA endurance race without a ticket in hand
Yeah.
as I'm driving up to it. And that's been a concern of mine in the past a couple times. Sebring, the first year I went when I was stuck in traffic for an hour, I was like, ooh, I hope I didn't fly down here for absolutely nothing. Message is clear now. If you want to get out to an IMSA race, by all means do it, but probably have a ticket in hand before you show up is the best call to have.
Yes, some pre-planning will go a long way.
Yeah. Going to the race itself here, I think there's absolutely no shortage to discuss here either. The race itself is a bit of a story of two tales, I'd say. First couple hours of the race were a much different tone than what we would see for the last 2/3 of the race, really half of the race especially. We had four full course yellows. In the opening 2 hours of the race, you're talking about a 53 car field starting on a what is it, 2.5 mile track, give or
Yeah.
take. There was a statistic that showed up on the broadcast that it was the second highest traffic density for the IMSA WeatherTech Championship this season after Indianapolis. I was talking about that on your stream that we were doing on Saturday.
Yeah.
I think this race is still going to be worse from a traffic perspective because you don't really have any margin for error. The track's a lot tighter. There's no runoff areas.
If you wanted to do track like pavement square footage, track racing surface square footage to car ratio, I'm sure that this would be the highest car to square footage ratio, because yeah, Indy, you get some a lot of the corners are fairly wide, and here it's certainly not as wide in most areas of the track. So makes for some hectic racing at times that we saw.
Yeah. And no greater indication of that than the first lap of the race. Unfortunately, I think the first lap of an endurance race, you just want to keep it clean. And the GTD class in particular was not able to say that this year. We had a pile up at the bottom of the S's. How fitting. Some people went off in the S's, you would say. And unfortunately, that really took out a big storyline for the race, which I think was the Bob Akin Award. Whoever finishes on top between AWA and Inception gets that invite to Le Mans. You're talking about the two defending winners of that award. Inception Racing really had nowhere to go, ended up hitting the Conquest Racing Ferrari, and that was day done for them and day done for the championship battle as well.
Yeah, this one was really unfortunate to see happen on lap one. It was not real. It was just kind of a typical, unfortunate incident that, that a car spun, or, kind of went off a little bit, spun. And the S's at the beginning of a race like this is pretty blind. You're just in a train of cars at that point. There's really not much that you can do. And it just caught a few cars out. Brandon Arieb in that 70 Inception Racing Ferrari have had a really solid season, of course, picking up the win last round out at Indy. And we're going head to head, shaping up for a great battle for that Le Mans invite. And then we never got to see that unfold. Took out some other solid cars as well, but yeah, that was the big storyline that was taken out in lap one. And that's racing. It'll break your heart, and it'll also give you lifelong memories. And unfortunately, this time it broke Inception's heart.
Yeah, and as you said, not really much they could have done about it. It's unfortunate that that's the way the season had ended.
Yeah.
Wasn't the only full course yellow we had in those opening 2 hours, as I mentioned earlier. We did have a couple of what I would call silly yellows.
Yeah.
We had the forget who was pushing the billboard around at this point, but you made a whole
52.
you made a
The
whole
50,
point about the billboards being too close to the track.
and
Um,
LMP2 did it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm not going to go into a deep, long point about this, but I think, as I've mentioned before, that's a full course yellow, or rather a virtual safety car situation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you talk about improving the on track product for IMSA, that's one of the last things that they really have to do, in my opinion. And I'll stand by that. I think that's a pure case of where it would be best used. But
Yeah. I know. Yeah, we don't want to dwell on it, but I will say
we've done it before.
I'm not expecting I would be surprised if they were to implement some sort of virtual safety car. Like I feel like this is we've had we've seen this happen for years, and there's been virtual safety car, these virtual full course yellows, code 60s, whatever, in place in other series for years, and I don't know if we're gonna ever see it implemented in IMSA, but maybe one day. But yeah,
Yeah, and
hopefully.
that's a discussion we've had before. So
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going to extend it any longer in this show.
yep,
And I agree with you. I really don't expect that we're going to see that added, especially for next season.
yeah, yeah.
But
We can
something I
always
would
dream,
like
right?
to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if we keep, you got to mention it. IMSA, everybody at IMSA definitely watches every second of this show. So
I mean,
then
they were in your chat Saturday.
yeah,
I should have just brought it up then. The social
yeah.
team is going to be obviously in charge of
We need
regulations.
we need to see the John Doonan official account pop up in the in our YouTube chat here, and then we know that we've made it to the top. So
There you go. Let's talk about the flip end of that, though. The second
yeah,
half of the race, as I said earlier, very unconventional for especially Petit Le Mans in a very positive way. It was actually akin to what we saw last year here, where we had
yeah,
two very long green flag runs, actually. Um, we had a few hours after the first 2 hours of the race, about to the middle of the race. And then we had a couple of yellows, and then we had a 4 hour nearly run of green flag racing to the finish. We did not have what I considered was a trademark, fully 100% guaranteed full course yellow in the final hour at Petit Le Mans.
yep,
Um, what can you say? I think we've talked about how the IMSA driving standards have improved recently.
hmm,
We've talked about how at Indianapolis we were starting to see the improvements from that. Of course, LMP2 at Indianapolis was a little bit hectic, but for the rest of
yeah.
the other classes there, it was very clean and safe. Um,
Yeah. This is I made note of this in my post race video. We I know that you mentioned we had four full course yellows in the first 3 hour or first 2 hours. We had five in the first 3 hours, and then we had a single one in the remaining 7 hours of the race. So that is, we can put up with, maybe that soft full course yellow that we had earlier in the race. I think if we do actually get to see the proper battles, get to unfold in like we did throughout this race, you got to see the cream rise to the top. And a
yep.
lot of that was, again, like you mentioned, the improved driving standards. We could see with an hour and 15 minutes to go or something like that in this race, we saw a respectful battle between Corvette and BMW, which, if you had said that after, I know they went at it in the Rolex, I'm pretty sure they were going at it still at Sebring with a little bit of argy bargy. But if you were to tell us that, back at the beginning of the season, I think we probably would have called you crazy. Like that was shaping up to be, if that battle had happened 3, 4 races ago, one of them is being pushed off into the grass or squeezed a fair bit there. So was really, really good to see that respectful racing in GTD Pro. We saw it in GTP as well. Yeah, that was a huge positive to take away, and it really helped this race develop. And it didn't, these long green flag periods, they didn't lead to a lack of action on track. We had
No.
3 of the 4 classes were John Hindhaugh at one point, with like when they were getting ready for the final pit stop cycle or something, he's like, 3 of the 4 classes, if you add up all the times, it's like 3.5 seconds that separated the leaders. It was something ridiculous like that. It was great to see just good, hard, respectful racing, and we got to see that play out over extended periods. That was kind of like we saw last year. Maybe Petit Le Mans is starting to buck that trend a little bit of maybe we're going to start to see, more long runs develop in this race if this continues.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If this race is supposed to be the Petit Le Mans, it was very similar to the actual 24 hours, at least the second, like I said, 2/3 of the race, with that very long green flag run that we had going on, especially to the finish. As you mentioned, I think the most important point of this is it let the race play out.
Yeah.
And I've been critical about that with certain IMSA races in the past, where when you have races that just cannot get into a rhythm, they can't get into a solid green flag run, it doesn't become who's the fastest driver team combo after 6, 12, 24 hours. It became who was the fastest in the 15-minute sprint to the end.
Yep.
We've seen that at some endurance races in the past, and I know there's obviously not much you can do about it in certain situations. If there's a crash that warrants a full course yellow in the final hour, so be it.
Yep.
What I will say is it negates the argument that you need to have continuous safety cars to bunch the field up, because I know when I've brought up this whole full course yellow, not slow zone, but virtual safety car concern in the past, some people have said in response, well, why don't you, if you go to a system like that, you're going to decrease the quality of the racing product from an actual action standpoint. Because the gaps aren't going to be as close. You're going to see sort of more what we see in the World Endurance Championship, where it's a more drawn-out 6-hour race, and the gaps are wider throughout. This race kind of proved that wrong, I think. Okay, it might not have been absolute nose to tail in the final half hour of the race where anybody in the top 5 in all 4 classes could have won, but what we did see were great intermanufacturer battles in all 3 of the classes that have manufacturer racing. And as you said, for 3 of the 4 classes, we had tight gaps at the end of the race, and that's after nearly 4 hours of green flag racing. So, as I've said, there's not a whole lot of negative I can take out of all of this.
Yeah, I would, if I were to dig and nitpick, and I know we had it noted here, like maybe I wouldn't blame this on the race though. Like I think it's just kind of the way things developed in this race is, the championship battles never got to take center stage. Like we never got to see the GTD Pro battle properly emerge in this one that was shaping up to be an absolute barn burner. And that wasn't because of the type of race that we saw there today. Like, sure, if there had been more full course yellows, then the field would have been bunched up more. Dragon Speed gets an opportunity to recover from the mistakes that they made, the penalties that they ultimately picked up that cost them a chance at this championship, really, at the end of the day. But yeah, that it took away a bit of the championship battles, but I think in exchange it gave us, some great other storylines. Like we got to see proper strategy play out in the final 4 hour, whatever it was, green flag run of this race that had us on the edge of our seats in the final 45 half hour, of that race. We really got to be immersed into that, strategic battle. I remember when we were on that watch along, it was just lap after lap watching the gap that Aston Martin had to the leading 31, and then all of a sudden Lamborghini, there was, are they going to be able to have the fuel to make it to the end, or what's going to happen there? So the yeah, I think the only negative that comes to my mind, maybe apart from some of those soft yellows, but I think that kind of was made up for with how the rest of the race unfolded, was we never got to see these championship battles unfold. Bob Aiken Award, of course, that was going to be razor thin. LMP2, which looked for a time in that race, the 22 United car, they had to have a really strong run in this race and kind of have AO have a mediocre race. And AO was having that mediocre race. AO had a mediocre race, and the 22 was leading. And we kind of had that taken away because I think there was a mechanical failure, a mechanical issue for the 22 that ultimately ended any chance that they had. So maybe that's the only negative, the only true negative that they can think of. But man, if that's what we're talking about, then yeah. At the end of the day, this was a really fun race to watch.
Yeah, to echo off of that point, because I was the one who put in the show notes here that if there's any negatives I was going to take out of this, is that the championship battles weren't as tight as previous years. Which, okay, let's look at the previous years. 2021 DPI championship battle goes down to literally the last corner.
Yep.
We didn't have something like that. We did not have something like 2023 with the championship being decided in turn one and both cars in the wall. We didn't have something like 2024 with Corvette and Heart of Racing, Aston Martin, and GTD Pro running one position behind the other to decide who wins the GTD Pro Championship. Now, what I will say is, while we didn't have all of that ultimate action in this race, I think that's partially unfortunate because of what happened in lap one. What we don't have, though, which is a positive, is controversy surrounding those champions.
Absolutely.
You can look at Dragon Speed and say, okay, unfortunately for them, they didn't put up a great race here. They didn't run ultimately as clean as Corvette. They picked up a penalty, and championship went to Corvette, and that's fair. That's the way it goes. I can tell you that if the two of them were on a 5-minute dash at the finish and took each other out, after Dragon Speed had a poor race and then proceeded to win the championship, we'd be spending this entire episode talking about how controversial that was, as we were talking about in this race in 2023. So, in my opinion, this is the way I would like to see championships be decided. You're not going to have an absolute barn burner every single year. I'm okay with that. This isn't NASCAR. And I think the race that we had very much compensated for it.
And like, there were some runs that cars had. Well, there was it in GTP. The run that we witnessed from the number 6 in this race is the reason why they won that championship. Like, if they had stumbled, then you opened the door immediately to the 7. I don't think the 31 had a mathematical chance coming into it. But if you stumble and you open the door to the 7 or the 24, who they weren't really all that strong in this race, but the 6 went out there when it looked like this was going to be a Cadillac and Acura show. Aston Martin was, of course, showing good pace as well, but Porsche went out there and did the Porsche thing. Maybe they didn't have the fastest, car out there this weekend, but they went and they executed their race. They were up near the front for a majority of this race, and they come home in what? They came home in third, I think. The 6 came home in third, I believe. Podium finish for the 6. They finished in third behind the Aston Martin and ahead of the Lamborghini. So, like, you know, if they don't execute well, and Porsche's, they've stumbled a little bit the past couple of months. If they stumble a little bit in this race, then it could have brought something out in GTP. But they execute a great race and wrap up, you know, their second consecutive championship. So good on Porsche for a good season and coming out and doing the Porsche thing in the last race of the year.
Yeah, we could talk about those championship results for
Yeah.
all four classes in a minute here. Just rapid fire, I want to go over some storylines that I took away from this race. Uh, Back-to-back wins for Cadillac, both in
Yeah.
IMSA and at this race. It was the 01 Ganassi winning here last year, but it was a back-to-back victory in IMSA competition for the 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac team. Great to see them rebounding after the very tough season that they had last year. And a season this year that also wasn't delivering a win until we got to the final two races of the year. It's got to be
Yeah.
good for them going into the off season with those two wins on their back.
Yeah, they're carrying some momentum, and you see, I think there was a lot of people that we saw the departure of Pipo Durrani from this program, and you knew that Jack Aiken was a strong driver. Fred Vesti, of course, was a pretty big question mark, and we have a pretty good idea of what Earl Bamber is at this point. But you kind of look at that lineup, and you're like, okay, it's a solid lineup. Do you think it goes up against a Porsche? Does it go up against a Wayne Taylor Racing and the experience that they have there? But I think this is a team and a lineup that really got stronger as the season went on, as Vesti, got to know the tracks a little bit better, the car, the series, everything. He was really strong in these last couple of races. Aitken was really strong in these last couple of races, and Earl Bamber as well, especially at Petite, was like they're carrying some momentum into next year. And if that is a driver lineup that stays together, and if Action Express can keep them together, that's going to be a scare. That could be a very scary lineup to face up against in a full season next year. So, yeah, it was good to see Cadillac emerge after the general struggles that they had throughout the year in these last couple of races, and a couple of real dominating wins for them to take into the offseason. And the 31 also picked up second place in the championship. That I think they may have been outside the top five with a couple of races to go. So big push from them at the end of the year to pull off these good results.
Yeah, you can talk about other teams / drivers that pulled off some good results here this weekend, or at least had some good energy going into the off season. We could talk about the debut for Max Esterson and the JDC Miller 963. I think you brought that up when I was doing that watch party on your channel. Just a solid debut from him. This is a much different car than he's used to driving over in F2. These cars are significantly heavier. They drive a lot differently. And
at a tough
really
race
no
like
negatives.
This,
Thrown into the deep end because he started this race for that team, I believe. So
yep, he did. Yep. Opening 3 hours. I think he did a triple stint on the beginning. So he was in for a lot of those chaotic, full course yellow filled moments. And you see a lot of drivers that, they're experienced teams, experienced drivers who still pick up penalties for like an improper sort of procedure under a full course yellow, not waiting until the red light is green at the end of pit lane, or changing lanes too early at the start of a race. So I think he deserves some kudos for just executing a good, clean opening stint, and also in a car that isn't quite there with the other factory supported entries a lot in IMSA. It was good to see him have a good opening first stint and drive that banana boat into the top five.
Yeah, absolutely. We had some standout battles in GTP. We had Vantor Brothers Duel. They talked about that on their podcast that you can go listen to. But we had Lawrence Vantor doing double duty for Porsche Penske Motorsport. Unfortunately, Julian Andlauer sidelined the morning of the race this year from severe back pain. Lawrence Vantor, who better than the driver who drove half of the 24 Hours of Le Mans last year in the 963, to step up for double duty at this race. He completed some on-track time in both of the Porsche Penske 963s and spent some time on that after that final restart battling with his brother Dries for second place in the 24 BMW. Two of them have shared some history, notably back at the Nürburgring 24 a handful of years ago, where it ended poorly for Lawrence. But on this occasion, none of that. Was able to see a great battle. We also had some great nose-to-tail battling the opening hour of the race, opening couple stints of the race, between the 60 Meyer-Shank Acura and the 31 Wayland Cadillac that ultimately won the race. But seeing those two manufacturers be that close after that much running, again, just very promising, especially at a track like this where you're driving through traffic as heavily as they are at the start.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, you're mentioning, some strong driver performances, and one that you had noted and that I just kind of realized, the other day was Grosjean, and just
Yep.
how strong he was in that 63. I noticed on the B pillar report, which is driver performance report. You can go to the B pillar. If you just search B pillar report on Google, you should be able to find the website where you can download or get those sent to you after each race. But Grosjean was the third fastest average racing lap time at the end of this one, behind Fred Vesti, who was tops, and Lawrence Vantor, of course, in the 6, where he did, I believe, a majority of his running
Yep.
was in that car. Or no, just 53 laps there. So I guess that's not a majority. No, it was. He only did
He did
20.
more running in the 6 than the 7.
Well, he actually did pretty.
Th-
Oh, he did 53 in both, is what it says.
Oh, did he? I
Yeah.
stand corrected.
Yeah. So interesting. Anyways, well, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'd have yeah, maybe that's not correct. So don't hold me to that. Regardless, you're behind some pretty good company in this race, and we've acknowledged that while the SE63 has shown improvements lately, that's it's still a lot to take that car from where it was to where it is, and go out there and execute and be that quick and drive the car like he did late in the race.
Yeah, Grosjean actually, shout out B Pillar for providing me with this stat. I was on the same page as you. Did actually the most laps of any driver in this race, 257 laps, which was 59% of the completed laps in that car.
I saw that number, and that's what turned me. I'm seeing 53 laps for Lawrence and then 257 for Grosjean, and I'm like, is that right? Am I looking at like some is that not what that laps means? But yeah, that's wild. 60% of a 10-hour race, with the things that a driver would have to think of mentally around here with that much traffic all the time. That he would be exhausted after that one. I bet he slept well on Saturday night.
Yeah, also got to be a shout for one of the most physically demanding tracks on the IMSA schedule. I mean, we have high speed turn 1, heavy braking zones. It's a physically difficult race. So massive shout out to Grosjean for getting that record done in this race. I would really love to see him land another GTP drive. I know he's trying to break back into IndyCar for 2026. But even if it's only for a Michelin Endurance Cup seat, which I guess would be probably more likely, with the demise of this SC63 program, at least for now, I think Grosjean has shown his potential in these cars, and would absolutely love to see him find something in IMSA next year.
Absolutely. I think I think as this summer has gone on, you think back to Watkins Glen, the effort that he put in there. Indy and now here at Petit, and the pace that he's shown. Yeah, I think he's definitely deserving. And yeah, it would be a shame if we don't get to see him on the grid next year.
Yep. Finally, last point I want to make. I want to give a shout out to Lila Wadu for being the
Yeah.
first woman to win Petit Le Mans in 20 years. There's another stat that was brought up on the NBC broadcast, but Liz Halliday won this race back in 2005 in the LMP2 class. Lila Wadu is the first woman to win in IMSA WeatherTech competition since herself last year at Watkins Glen, driving in the LMP2 class. Not only that, though, she was the fastest driver in the GTD class in this race, the only driver in GTD to break into the 119s. I think it was a 119.997, so close as you can get. But very impressive driver, and one that ultimately awarded that team the race victory in GTD.
And if you want to stick with the B pillar report, was the sixth quickest driver overall in the GTD class, and in some pretty
On
good
average,
company.
right?
Yeah, in
That's
average, top. She was the top silver driver by only actually her teammate is a couple behind her, but ahead of drivers like Jack Hawksworth, Miguel Molina, of course, a platinum driver there.
never heard of him.
Right in the mix with some just the icons that of the sport, like her teammate Alessandro Pirguidi, just ahead of
Who's
her
that?
by a little bit.
Yeah,
Were you,
yeah,
were you
no,
gonna say something?
absolutely. No, I was just throwing shade at the 499p drivers.
No, oh. But like I feel one of the things I was gonna say is one of the when I was thinking of pre-race picks for this GTD class, Lilo Wadu is one of those drivers that stuck out to me as could be a real difference maker, as one of those like super silvers. We haven't talked a ton about super silvers here on this channel, I guess, that much lately, but having a really strong silver driver that can hang with the likes of your gold and platinum drivers, that's a huge plus for a team. And we saw they had good pace at Indy. They carried that through, and they executed a flawless race. Not only Lilo, but the whole team there. So yeah, well done to her, and congratulations. I think you mentioned, last win was for her was an LMP2 at Watkins Glen last year. So, yeah, definitely a name that we'll be hearing about for years to come. And I think she's only 22 or something like that. So, yeah, bright future.
Yeah. Any thoughts to bring us home on the race? If not, I will toss the mic over to you. You can go over the champions really quickly, because I know we have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about everything. Yeah, that I'd want to touch on for those classes. So we can jump over to the championships and how those ended up. In GTP, it was, as we talked about, the number 6 Porsche Penske Motorsports 963 of, I don't remember the drivers of that car. I don't have them in front of me. So it is the number 6 Porsche that brought it home there, ahead of the 31 Cadillac and the number 7 Porsche. In LMP2, we didn't really get to see things develop there as nicely as we wanted to, like we had kind of touched on. But it was the number 99 AO Racing entry that took it home there. The 11 TDS Racing, who won back-to-back races. We didn't talk much about them, but they won back-to-back races here in 2025 at Indy and Petit. They also did the exact same thing last year, winning Indy and Petit. So, they clearly know how to get it done in these final two races. They finished second in the championship, and then the 43 Inter Europol finished in third there. In GTD Pro, it was the 3 Corvette by Pratt Miller Motorsports taking the win ahead of the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari. Dragon Speed, I know we gave them a lot of praise in the shows leading up to this. Truly a mega job that they did this year, going up against all those factory outfits and being right there in it in the final race. So well done to Dragon Speed. I think a lot of people were rooting for them to bring home that GTD Pro crown. Although there's also a lot of Corvette fans. So, but yeah, a lot of people looking for that good feel good story in Dragon Speed. And then in the GTD ranks, it was basically wrapped up going into this race for the 57 Windward Racing Mercedes. And after that big lap one incident, basically further locked that up for them. They win the GTD championship ahead of the 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin. Michelin Endurance Cup, quickly touch on the 7 Porsche edged out the 31 Cadillac. So that's the non-championship winning number 7 Porsche, it should be noted. They were the ones they went on a heck of a run at the beginning of the season. You think winning the Rolex, winning Sebring, and then kind of faded a little bit as the season goes on, but they hold on for the Michelin Endurance Cup by just 1 point. TDS Racing and Inter Europol tied in LMP2, but TDS won based on a tiebreaker there. So again, a couple of mega final rounds for them to bring home that Michelin Endurance Cup. In GTD Pro, it was a battle of the two Paul Miller Racing BMWs. The 48 came on top there. They had a perfect race. I think they swept all 3 of the point stages in this one. And then in GTD, it was the 70 Inception Racing Ferrari was in the mix heading into this race, but with their early accident, of course, they fell down the standings a little bit, and it was the 21 AF Corsa Ferrari who, again, had a very, very strong race. And they emerged there. Bronze Cup, AWA, of course, they were tied with Inception. They didn't have to do much in this race to wrap that up, but they're going back to Le Mans for a second year in a row. And the only real close manufacturer's title, I don't remember what the GT Pro one was looking like, actually. But at least the GTP fight was basically between Acura and Porsche. Whoever finished ahead of who was going to take that home. And Porsche, of course, by virtue of finishing third in the race, edged out Acura for that crown as well.
There you go. A lot quicker than we were at previewing the championships last week. But,
indeed.
That's the full rundown of the champions for the 2026 WeatherTech Championship. Any closing thoughts from all of this on you?
Yeah, do we maybe just touch on, we had some questions or some comments that came in about Petit before we move on to some of the news. Some of these are going to be more relevant for the news, but
yes, I did not read through the questions.
I have one that we can talk about, and it's from Justin Kids, and they asked, are the grid walks still fun? Crowd size is too large now. I would say one of the things I still very much enjoy doing the crowd walk or the grid walk, and definitely make a point of going out before the race and doing the grid walk at every race, because it gives you such a good feel for like the atmosphere of a race weekend. Even though, yes, they are packed now. It's not like they were a few years ago where you still had some space to breathe on pit road. They're absolutely packed now. And sure, it's going to take you longer to do the grid walk. You're going to be packed in. It's going to be slow moving, but you get to feel the atmosphere and the excitement of the race before it gets underway. And I think, if this is your, if this is you've gone to a ton of races, you've done the grid walk a ton of times, maybe it loses some of that sparkle. But I still love doing the grid walk and getting the feel for the atmosphere going into that race. The crowd buzz, the excitement around it is it's hard to top for me.
Yeah, for me, I think it depends on the track and situation. There have
Yeah.
been grid walks that I go on. There have been grid walks that I've skipped in the past. I've gone on my fair share of them throughout the years.
Yeah.
Um, you're right; they are very crowded nowadays, and I've certainly been a part of noticing the increase that we've seen in the number of people on those grid walks, and just also in attendance at the races over the past 10 years or
Yeah.
so. Um, my trick has always kind of been to go in the second half, especially if I'm there working, because there have been certain races where I work credentialed media, and that's where I'll want to be, especially if I'm doing photography or some videography stuff on the grid walk as early as I can, because there's a lot of fun stuff to
Yeah.
shoot there. Um, there have been other years though, just as a fan, where I'll go for the second half of it because usually it seems to quiet down a bit as it gets closer to the end. Um, I'd say the determining factor is where do you want to be for the start of the race. There have been grid walks that I've skipped just out of virtue of I prioritized where I wanted to be at the start. Um, Nürburgring 24 was a big one of those for me this year. I know it's not IMSA, but
Yeah. But
concept
still
applies.
relevant.
Um, I know Road America back in 2021, I skipped the grid walk because I wanted to be over um, near the bridge on the back straightaway at the start of the race. So I would say if you're just concerned about the crowd sizes being too large, you can get around it a little bit. You either have to get there at the very start or go in the second half. But otherwise, I still think they're fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you haven't been to an IMSA race yourself yet, um, you know, like it's a must experience thing.
Yeah.
Make sure that you plan ahead and plan your pre-race sort of activities around doing that grid walk, but it's absolutely must see because again, the energy that's around it, the excitement is you feel that it becomes real and you get to see the cars up close. You might get to see a pit stop demonstration up close as well. And even though it might take a little bit longer than it used to, it's still worth it for sure.
And there are certain tracks that are easier to navigate than others. Road Atlanta
Yeah.
actually being one of those because you can actually jump up in the pit lane when all the cars are lined up on the front straightaway. And
Yep.
most people are not walking around the pit lane at that time, so you can walk from the back to the front quick as you want. Daytona as well. In the 2 times I've been to Daytona, have never been up front when they're actually rolling the cars out, just because there's so many people there. But
Yeah.
they really open up the front straightaway at Daytona to do whatever you want. So spend some time out near the start finish line. You get a sense of the banking at Daytona, um, even if you're not up close and seeing the cars right in front of your eyes. It's still a lot of fun.
And Blue Moon makes a point here, wishes that the grid walk was a little longer than 45 minutes for the Glen because it is a packed pit lane in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think IMSA's done a good job at making it longer at events that they can, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see them try and push that out a little bit more in the future as well. I think at the Rolex this year they made or maybe it was last year they started to make the grid walk longer for that because they knew of the big crowd. And you look at a race like Road Atlanta, you have all morning. If you make the grid walk 15 minutes longer to an hour, push that out a little bit, then that could that can help a lot as well. So yeah, we'll see if IMSA is good at recognizing these things and trying to make improvements again for the fans. You hear sort of John Doonan talk about that a lot, so hopefully that's an adjustment maybe they can make in the future.
Yeah. Intern Talks Wheel asked, good question actually. Is it safe to say Aston wins Petit Le Mans if Lambo didn't try to go to the distance? Um, I was very interested in that storyline watching the end of the race with you. I don't think so, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think this is a track position track, and Cadillac ultimately, to my surprise, was able to hold the lead coming off of the final pit stop. I think whoever exited the pits ahead at the end was probably going to be able to hold on to it to win because the pace ultimately between those two cars was pretty similar. Um, We saw Porsche try to put up an attack on the 31 at the end of the race, but ultimately they weren't able to pass them. I don't think Aston would have been able to either. But really, for me, what was surprising is that they weren't in that position in the first place, because with that 42-ish second gap when the
Yeah.
31 pulled in for their final pit stop, and it being about 42 seconds in the pit lane, I really thought that was going to go the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that, and yeah, I think if you wanted to point at anything, like what would have made Aston win Petit Le Mans, they we talked about, we were following every single lap of the Aston Martin, looking at their lap times, and there was a couple laps, whether it was traffic, it was probably traffic related, but if you were to have a couple of those middle of those stint laps go a little bit differently, then we very well could be talking about an Aston Martin Valkyrie getting their debut win right now. So they were close. They were close. They had the pace, and they I applaud Aston Martin for trying that. The different strategy. They took a swing and it almost worked out for them.
Yep. Someone's saying I still think the Petit Le Mans grid should be around 30 cars. Um, Hate to say it, but I see that as a hard disagree. I think what we had this year with a 53 car grid, whilst yes, it's very chaotic, was a race that still delivered. It wasn't at a point where it seemed excessive. And I think part of the challenge for these cars and all of these drivers on track, being four classes there, is that strategy, is that traffic that you have to deal with. That's a critical talking point with Petit Le Mans, and I wouldn't change it.
Aaron says, "Whoever wants 30 cars will love SRO this weekend."
Yeah. Well, also, I just don't. I mean, how would you get the grid down to 30 cars? You'd have to
Yeah,
tell some classes to stay home, and
you're
at an
axing
endurance race,
LMP2
especially.
and
Yeah, I mean, especially an endurance race as I don't know if prestigious is the right word, because of course this race is, in the grand scheme of things, still relatively new, but it's still one of the marquee IMSA races of the year.
yeah,
Um, Not one that I would want anybody to sit home for.
yeah. Should we move on to some news?
Yeah, we can. We did get word before the race this weekend of the 2026 IMSA entry list that we'll be expecting for next year. Probably not the full picture, though. We have heard that there are additional entries that are likely going to be granted on the grid for next year that haven't officially been announced yet. So, what we're going to do, not go over every single entry for all four classes. That would take up even more time. Wanted to hit some of the key changes, though, that we're going to be seeing in the four classes. So, I'll give myself the liberty of taking the easy one here. GTP. Not a whole lot of changes in this class for next year. We are, of course, seeing the change of BMW and their partner team that they're running with from our Team RLL over to Team WRT, which, of course, is a partnership they've shared over in the World Endurance Championship for the past 2 years now. And WRT has been running BMWs for a handful of seasons now since their departure from Audi. The only other notable that I see here is the lack of any mention of a Proton Porsche. We don't see them listed as a Michelin Endurance Cup entry, as we did for this season. Of course, they weren't present at the last two races of this year, citing that damage that they had from Watkins Glen. I don't know. Sounds like there might be some uncertainty, though, for that program on both sides of the pond going into 2026. So maybe we see something come out of them for like the Rolex. But I haven't heard a lot to that point.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's some dominoes maybe that could fall with that, and one of the other big pieces of news that that we had come out in the lead up to this race. But I was doing, just perusing. I think it was Sports Car 365 that I saw this in, but it may have been Daily Sports Car. I apologize. But they had alluded to, like Proton knew all along that the chassis wasn't going to be ready for this race anyways, that they damaged at
Mhm.
Watkins Glen. It was that damaged. So, but still unfortunate to not see them on the grid. There are still, as you said, a few spots that could be confirmed, but I think those more than likely fall into another class that we'll get to here in a minute. So, yeah, I guess GTP maybe going to be a little bit smaller at these Endurance Cup rounds than we saw this year with the subtraction of Lamborghini and Proton, but still not a bad grid size.
Yeah, we still have a lot of heavy hitters in there. I've been bitten when I say I have high expectations before, but I really do think BMW WRT is going to be a strong championship contending team next year. Sorry for jinxing it,
Yeah,
but
we
we'll
know
have
how
to
that
see
worked.
if they're up to bat right away next year.
It
Um,
took Whelan a year and a half to shake the jinx we put on him at the beginning of last year. So
that's true. I'm on your WRT.
yeah,
Over in the LMP2 class, a couple of
yeah.
changes that we'll be seeing for this grid next year. Of course, we have Brian Herta Autosport partnering with PR1 Mathiasen next year in that 52 car. That was already announced about a month or two back. Team Tonus, who made their debut at Road America this year, will be full-time in the LMP2 class next year. At least they're expected to be full-time in that class. We will no longer be seeing, though, the Riley, the 74 Riley, which has historically been a pretty strong team in the LMP2 class. I know they were your pick for Petit Le Mans. They will not be present in the LMP2 class anymore with the departure of Gar Robinson, although they still will be present over in the GTD class for 2026. So overall, not a whole lot of changes planned for LMP2 at this time. You have something to add there?
We do. There's another car that may
What did I miss?
fly under the radar a little bit that's missing. The AF Corsa entry that's sometimes under PCOM Racing or has
Mhm.
been referred to it as that at times, but they've been on the grid for I mean, again, they fly under the radar, so I don't remember how long they've really been on the grid, but definitely the past few years and yeah, they won't. They're currently not yet listed to be on next year.
Yeah, and another one I forgot about, shame on me, is the addition of Intersport Racing next year
Oh
in the
yes,
37 car. We talked about that a couple shows ago, but they'll also be here in the LMP2 class, again, slated for a full season entry next year. There aren't actually any planned LMP2 entries right now that are listed as Michelin Endurance Cup only entries. So
I mean it's. Do they own what are the only other races that they run? They're 2 hours 40. It's CTMP and Road America, I think. So I guess
yeah,
it's not an overly taxing schedule for
that's true.
LMP2.
That's a good point. Yep. Do you want to take charge on
Sure.
GTD Pro?
I can take GTD Pro. So, you got a lot of your standard entries here that we've come to see as locks in GTD Pro. But we do also have some additions. As my camera's overheating, so hopefully it doesn't go
Just telling you,
dead.
we're on the clock here.
The some additions that are moving up. You do have the Triarsi Competizione Ferrari. We also have the return of the Risi Competizione Ferrari. Both of those are Michelin Endurance Cup only entries. You have the 75 Express Racing. Actually, I guess manufacturers haven't been confirmed technically yet, as you do lose me here on my beautiful face. I'll work on getting that fixed. But you also see a huge addition to the grid is the Manti Racing Porsche, the 911 entry. I believe that's the one that's going to be run in the Grello livery. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that was a
So
huge announcement that came up right before the race weekend here, at the start of the race weekend, rather. That Manti Racing, of course, a huge Porsche customer team over in Europe. We've seen them run in the World Endurance Championship. We've seen them run in the NLS over at the Nürburgring. They'll be making their IMSA debut, I believe. They might have. Well, I guess they've raced in IMSA races before, like if you include the ALMS, when they would have been. Were they on the grid that year at Sebring in 2012? I can't even remember. I don't. I don't think so, actually. Anyways, I digress. First time in IMSA in a long time, at the very least, with the Grello livery in GTD Pro, and then the first form livery that we've seen over in the WEC down in the GTD class. While you take a look at... Oh, I lost Stu. I'm on my own here, going over the rest of the GTD Pro class for the next couple of minutes, it seems. Oh, he's back.
I'm back.
There we go. I think we've done it.
We're back.
We're back.
Okay.
I was about to take liberty of doing the rest of the GTD Pro class. But if you're back, it seems you can.
Yeah, I can hopefully I'm caught up here. It sounded like I was lagging for a minute, but yeah, there is there are a few notable omissions as well from the GTD Pro. I think we covered all of the additions to the GTD Pro class, but there were some omissions. Notably, you'll notice that Paul Miller Racing only has one entry in on the grid right now. It is understood that there's some manufacturers that are playing some kind of our teams that are maybe playing some musical chairs or waiting to confirm what manufacturer they're going to be aligned with. We know Paul Miller Racing right now with the two BMWs. Based on everything that we heard from, whether it be Marshall Pruitt, whether it be SportsCar 365, whether it be Daily Sports Car, they're all kind of reporting the same thing. McLaren, it sounds like, are kind of in the mix, maybe there. Perhaps Lamborghini as well. Of course, then and BMW as well. So Paul Miller Racing, see what news emerges there, and this also has a big impact on Random Vandals Racing, who was essentially made the announcement they're coming to GTD Pro. Made that announcement, was it a month ago around? And they currently race BMWs. But with the uncertainty that's there, they are still, I think everybody's still expecting that they're going to be an addition to this GTD Pro grid. We're just kind of waiting for all the puzzle pieces to fall into place there. I think the team owner was cited as saying there are some circumstances outside of some irregular circumstances or something like that. Kind of outside of their control that they're waiting to have fall into place. So yeah, GTD Pro, pardon me. There's a little bit of musical chairs still to play there.
Yeah, and another piece to the puzzle that was sort of brought up this weekend, although nothing is formal with it yet, is we might be seeing the addition of Team RLL after their departure from BMW and GTP. Was noted that they were discussing a potential GTD Pro or maybe an LMP2 program, and that they've been in discussion with some GTD manufacturers already. I believe it was McLaren was one that was thrown
and
out.
Lamborghini.
Lamborghini.
Yep.
So potential we see them added onto the official entry list, although of course nothing set in stone for that right now. Shout out Nate Dean, friend, for fact checking me and saying Manti were on the grid at Daytona 2018. I knew something sounded familiar there. Just couldn't put my finger on it.
It just to wrap up that thought with like some of these manufacturers as well. So me being a massive homer, it comes into my mind, but it was already confirmed that FAF are going to be back with Lamborghini next year. So there is going to be at least one Lamborghini in GTD Pro, but it would be interesting if we got, Paul Miller Racing returning to Lamborghini, or if we saw an RLL or something like that, come onto the grid with a Lamborghini as well, and kind of see Lamborghini expand that presence a little bit when they're pulling the SC63 off. And yeah, that would be interesting if that develops.
Yeah, that would be interesting. McLaren would also be interesting though, because
Yeah.
McLaren had a short run as a full time entrant in the GTD Pro class. It would be great to see either one of those teams represent McLaren for a full season effort, but time will tell, I guess.
And could a McLaren full season effort, if they fall in with a team like an RLL or something like that, could it be a precursor of something to come with a hypercar? That's maybe jumping a little bit too far ahead, but I was not expecting to hear. It was a surprise to hear that McLaren are actively speaking with teams about coming back to the IMSA grid in the GT ranks.
Yeah.
Should we talk about GTD now?
Yeah, bring us home.
All right, GTD. So, some interesting notes here. We do have the 13 AWA, as we've known it for years now as AWA. It does sound like they're rebranding to 13 Motorsports. There's a couple different lists that are floating around. One had AWA listed, some had 13 Motorsports listed. My understanding is that they're rebranding to 13 Motorsports for next year, but that will still be that Corvette. They're going to Le Mans, yada yada. You already touched on the Riley joining the GTD grid with the 16, and that is confirmed to be a Ford Mustang. They went and picked up the car. There was a SportsCar 365 article that I saw kind of highlighting that pickup and the announcement of them being with Ford. So they're with they're back with Ford in the 16, full season confirmed as well. Vanderstar Racing, their Aston Martin expands to a full season effort. Good to see there. And then a big addition to the GTD grid, which I think you're a little bit disappointed to see, is Dragon Speed. Dragon Speed Ferrari is making the, I don't want to say the step down to GTD, but they're making the switch over to GTD from their GTD Pro effort. So you can, I assume that they'll stick with Ferrari for next year, but they'll be running in GTD. And then, of course, we did already touch on Manti as an addition to. Is it pronounced Manti? Like, man.
That's how I'm going with it.
Okay, good. I figured it was, and that's kind of how I hear it pronounced on broadcasts, but I'm not necessarily the best with names all the time. In addition to Manti and their Michelin Endurance Cup effort, you'll also notice a new addition here, RS1. They currently run in the Michelin Pilot Challenge and are coming off of a championship in the GS class there. They run Porsches there, so maybe you could point to them running a Porsche in GTD for the Michelin Endurance Cup next year. I believe they also run in some SRO as well. But yeah, RS1 joining the grid, and there are also some notable emissions, and then we'll kind of talk about everything here as a whole. Missing, we do have Forte Racing and their Lamborghini were not on the entry list. This one was surprising to me because their gentleman driver, if you could call it that, I believe he's the gentleman driver, Misha Goiberg, was actually demoted to a bronze ranking in the driver classification. So I thought, oh, that's going to be a good opportunity for them to try and fight for that Le Mans bid next year. But they're currently not on the entry list. There's no Iron Dames. There's no Chentalar. There's no Magnus. There's no Korthoff Racing. And a team that we've seen kicking tires and publicly said that they want to be in the WeatherTech Championship at some point. Samantha Tan Racing, who just wrapped up the bronze championship in the VP Sports Car Challenge GTD X class, are also not on the list. But there are still a few entries to be confirmed here for full season Michelin Endurance Cup entries. So could be more news to come on that front. Is there anything that you noticed that I missed, or anything stand out to you from this list?
I didn't notice you miss anything. I will say, also surprised about some of those emissions, notably Forte and Korthoff.
Yeah.
I think were the two that stood out to me. Of course, this isn't final, especially with these lower Pro-Am classes, LMP2 and GTD. A lot of these teams come and go, so there is a chance that we see some of these teams join middle of the season for select races, maybe Daytona. Some of these entries are on the list because all of the entries that we've gone over today, this is not for the Rolex 24 next year. That has its whole separate entry list that we'll be hearing about over the coming months. Yeah, I think the big one to me, the big standout that I was surprised about was Dragon Speed. Sounds like they're going to be losing that support from Risi as Risi steps back into their own entry for the Michelin Endurance Cup rounds. I think it's disappointing. I really would have loved to have seen another 296 GT3 full season effort in the GTD Pro class. Dragon Speed was just so surprisingly strong this year, especially in the second half. And like in a fantasy world, I wish they were making the step up. I wish I would love to see a customer 499p, even though I know it would never happen. But
we could
who
dream,
knows?
right?
Maybe this is a temporary thing. Maybe we see them back in pro in the future. But yeah, just a little disappointing to not see that full season entry in GTD Pro for Ferrari.
I'll also add on another bit of a surprise from a Ferrari team. Triarci. I'm a little bit surprised to not see them, be able to piece together a full season of one of these cars being a full season. They're back with two cars for the Michelin Endurance Cup, the 023 and 033 cars. But yeah, it was just a little bit surprised at that. I mean, in my eyes, the way that they performed the second half of the season, like they made a heck of a charge. I mean, Kenton Cook was able to bolt up to, I think, second in the drivers' championship, or I guess once you factor in, the tie for first, like he was technically probably third in the drivers' championship. But yeah, I was surprised to see that Triarci isn't currently listed as a full season entrant. Like you said, I suppose some of these things can change or evolve as the off season goes along. But yeah, that was a bit surprising to see as well.
Yeah. Question just came in. I stepped away. Did they talk about Porsche leaving Hypercar? We didn't yet, but I can segue into that right now.
Perfect segue.
Spent a lot of this episode talking about positive things. I guess we'll unfortunately end it with the negative. Porsche, of course, did announce, if you've been living under a rock, that they will not be present in the Hypercar class in the WEC for next year. That's something that we had heard rumors about over the past month or two at this point. It was only a confirmed 3-year program from the start of it, so there was always some indication that maybe that program wouldn't get renewed for next year, but it wasn't really something that crossed my mind as a real possibility. But nonetheless, we did get a formal announcement from Porsche last week before Petit Le Mans that they will not be racing in the WEC Hypercar class next year. Now, a lot of questions come with that. Number one, why? Number two, do we see any privateers in the Hypercar class next year? Number three, does that affect the LMGT3 Porsches from running in that class?
True.
And I guess four, if you want to tack on a bonus, what does this mean for the future of the 963 in IMSA? So I guess we'll hit on all of those. The first thing I want to say is the why they did this. I'll read the official statement from Porsche, which, by the way, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but Mark Lieb is listed as the team lead sports communications now, the team lead for sports communications. And he, of course, is the former 919 hybrid driver who won Le Mans with them in 2016. So never seen a career shift like that, but I guess that's interesting.
I feel like he was on the international broadcast at one point as well.
He might have been.
I think I had him on.
Not a whole lot in this statement specifically. But it says Porsche Penske Motorsport will end its involvement in the FIA WEC at the end of the current season. Dr. Michael Steiner. We very much regret that due to current circumstances, we will not be continuing our involvement in the WEC after this season. So, the main thing that Porsche cited for their departure is purely around financial reasons. Of course, Porsche, along with other manufacturers in Germany, have been struggling recently due to the recent state of the economy. They have been impacted by U.S. import tariffs of course, a manufacturer producing cars in Germany. Now, Daily Sports Car, I do want to give credit to them. I guess Graham Goodwin for reaching out to them to ask about whether or not balance of performance was a deciding factor in all of this as well, because I know a lot of people, myself included, were aware that Porsche has not been very happy about the current state of BOP in the World Endurance Championship, especially in the second half of this season. Now, the quote I'm going to read from the DSC article that I will link below and in the description if you're listening on a podcast platform says, DSC has also established from senior sources that the quality or otherwise of BOP in 2025 was not a part of the decision-making process in this case. I saw that followed up with another statement and another article as well, sort of driving home that BOP and Porsche's lack of confidence in it from this season of the WEC does not seem like it made an impact on their decision. In fact, there was a vote in the past month on whether or not to retain the BOP system in the hypercar class, and Porsche actually voted to retain BOP. So that's what we know right now. It does seem like it's a purely financial cost-cutting measure from the manufacturer themselves. They will be continuing over in IMSA. They will be continuing their Formula E program. There is a big drive for Porsche on an executive level to maintain that EV presence right now, which is why they want to continue in Formula E. Which I guess brings us to the next big question on will we see any privateer 963s on the WEC grid next year? I don't know is the short answer of this. I don't think anybody knows at this point. Of course, if there were going to be privateers, you'd have to look first at Proton. They've been running Porsche Privateer 963s since 2023. We, as I said, don't really know at this time if we'll see them step up with a second car next year. Now, that is what would be required of them if they were to want to race full time next year. With the 2-car mandate that was put in place at the start of this season, they would have to cough up the change, and that is quite a bit of change to be represented on the grid next year. I don't believe we've heard a whole lot from Proton at this point in time.
They were, I can't remember who they had on from SportsCar 365 on the international feed. They said they were pretty tight-lipped about it. So
there you go.
Is Jamie Klein? Is he with SportsCar 365?
He is. Yeah. It might have been Davey Ovema.
Maybe. Yes. It was. Yeah.
I know he was on the broadcast.
Okay, it may have been Davey then. I missed the part where they were talking, where they introduced them. So, but yeah, they did mention on the broadcast that the Proton was being pretty tight-lipped when asked about, why weren't they going to have an entry in IMSA next year? And yeah, so probably some stuff in the works there, or they're trying to get some stuff in the works there anyways. Hopefully.
Let me throw what I think would be the optimal situation down right now. And I guess maybe most likely, if likely at all, I don't see Proton entering a second car next year. I just don't. I haven't seen where it would be in the cards for them right now. all the reports I've seen at this time indicate that they're not in a position to be doing that next year. Now, the two cars don't need to come from the same team. And I'll tell you one thing, which is that Penske still needs to chalk a Le Mans win off his board in the motorsports game that he's played for decades. So whilst I'll put my hand up right now and say I don't think this is going to happen next year, but in a perfect world, I see Proton continuing with one car full time next year, and I see Penske running a privateer entry in the WEC full time as well. The reason being that Penske still has an auto invite for winning the Drivers' Championship in GTP this year. So they would be able to race two cars at Le Mans next year. And I think if you're Penske, look, 2026, as far as I'm aware, would probably be the last chance to do this, because without proper factory support behind all of this, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty with Porsche beyond 2027 or 2026, sorry. Maybe next year would be your last chance under this current rule set to chalk up that Le Mans win. And two cars, two bullets in the chamber is going to be a lot better than one. So if I were Roger and I were able to swing that, that's probably what I would do. But that's purely speculative.
Oh, if this means that we get like a Penske trucking yellow and blue Porsche 963, then that would make me very happy.
Give me the DHL. Bring it back.
Oh, or DH. Yeah, bring DHL back. Bring DHL back. That would, that's a can of worms. That's a fun can of worms to open.
Yeah. Well, it's something that we can play fun with for a little while here until one or the other formally confirms that they won't be on the grid next year. But so Porsche said that they will be willing to work with customers who are trying to get on the grid for next season. Of course, there's an entry fee that has to be paid to race in the WEC. I think it's somewhere in the realm of €500,000 for a season. Although they just won't be fully backing the effort as a factory team. The real kicker in all of this, unfortunately, is just the two-car mandate. I've talked about it before, but it's one of the contributing factors for us not seeing a Lamborghini on the grid at Le Mans this year, and also WEC in general. It's potentially going to be the reason we don't see a 963 on the grid at all next year. So, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that specifically anymore because I've gone at lengths to do it before, but is it another casualty of the two-car mandate? Maybe.
Yeah, it could be. I was just thinking that if it turns out that Porsche's not on the grid next year, they were talking about on the international broadcast about
Davey was running his mouth.
Well, I don't know if Davey said this or if they were just talking about this at another point, but if Porsche isn't in WEC next year and those cars aren't eligible for Le Mans, like what happens to that invite? IMSA gets to choose what, they can, it's always given to the GTP championship winner, but IMSA ultimately could choose, to give it to someone else. I mean, I don't know if Penske would be interested in running an LMP2 or something, maybe. But this could mean that GTP championship fight, the run that the 31 went on at the end of the year, if they just go to the next in line in the championship, that could be big for them. And we could see, that red Cadillac running at Le Mans again. So.
Well, that's interesting because the Whelen Cadillac has historically, for the past 3 years, gotten an invite to Le Mans. Mm-hmm. So is there any indication that would change next year?
Yeah.
Where they would need that invite?
But it could mean just, we could get, Whelen that returns and Wayne Taylor Racing is able to also go back, sort of thing. There could be trickle down effect from that, but I maybe that's thinking too.
Yeah, I don't
far
know, because
ahead.
that's what we had on the grid this year, and and
Yeah, but
neither
because
one of them won the
yeah, I guess
championship
I'm
last year.
yeah, with Porsche winning the championship last year, you're right. But we're gonna also you got to think as well. We have the Genesis coming next year, so there's gonna be
Yeah.
a couple additional spots. But if Porsche's off, then they kind of just slot into that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It could be interesting to see if there are if that has any sort of impact and trickle down effect from it. But kind of
Yeah,
distracting, I
well,
guess, as well. Kind of got us off track.
well, I'll try to get us back on track a little bit here because I did want to quickly touch on whether or not that would affect the Manti LMGT3 entries in the
Yeah.
WEC next year. It does not sound like that will have any impact on that LMGT3 program, so expect both of those cars to still be on the grid for next year, is everything I've seen at this point. And then for IMSA, I guess let's bring it back stateside for a minute here because how long or how much time does the 963 program have left in IMSA? By the sounds of things, Penske is still in a contract with Porsche right now to run a 963 program, and simply breaching that contract would have been an extremely costly move for Porsche to make. So it wasn't really something that they were in a position to do. I don't know how long that contract is because my understanding that it was just a 3-year deal for both programs. So there must have been an extension at some point that I didn't hear about. But can we see this IMSA program in the GTP class running into the late 2020s, into 2030?
I think we could see. I mean, 963s have been the only cars that have proven that have really seen customers take hold of them. So you could say Porsche has maybe the current kind of monopoly on that market. Um,
Sure.
I mean, IMSA also doesn't have the two car rule, so we wouldn't see JDCs. I assume we wouldn't see JDCs go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
Um, could that could you see with IMSA being a cheaper championship to run in financially because you're not trucking these or flying these cars all over the world, you're trucking them from state to state. Is that could you see maybe Proton come back and run a full season effort in the future? I mean, maybe, who knows, right? Um, I I don't know. I think it's a lot. I could see it surviving in IMSA. I don't know if I could see it continuing to thrive like it has the past couple of years, though. I think it
Yeah.
would be much more challenging, of course, for those privateer entries to go up against the factory outfits.
Sure. And that's really what I was interested in is do we see the factory effort continue
Yeah.
in the same way that it does now? I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm really surprised, to be honest, that they decided to axe the WEC program just for the sole reason of Le Mans. That's really the last chip that the 963 program had on its shoulder. They've, of course, won the IMSA championship.
Yeah.
They just won the drivers' championship again in IMSA and the constructors. They won the 24 hours of Daytona. They've won 12 hours of Sebring. Have not won Petit Le Mans, but I think the 24 hours of Le Mans would carry a little bit more weight for them, to be honest with you.
But
It all strikes me as surprising, but I guess when you think about it, if the North American market is a priority for Porsche right now, and you have to factor in the costs as well, which Graham Goodwin seemed to indicate actually that the cost difference between an IMSA and WEC program is actually closer than a lot of people think. So I don't know anything beyond that, but that was at least noteworthy. It's a boardroom decision, really, is what it
yeah,
boils down to.
yeah, I was just gonna say they're not making this decision based on what Roger Penske wants to do and what the race team wants to do. They're making this decision based on you know what marketing wants to do and where they want to
Mm-hmm.
push those marketing dollars and that effort. So it is unfortunate that we see a these racing decisions be impacted by boardrooms. But ultimately those boardrooms are what has helped to get us to this strong grid and strong field that we see here today. So we unfortunately have to take kind of the bad with the good, and this could be worse. Like, we could have seen all the entire program
Yeah,
be brought down. I mean, we still could see that in the future, but right now, at least we still have the 963 and IMSA, and who knows if the 963, if that program just stays trucking along in IMSA for the next couple of years, and things turn around with Porsche and what how and they cited it as a cost cutting measure. If things turn around in a couple of years, there's no reason that we couldn't see that effort be reestablished in the WEC. I'm sure they'd be welcomed back with open arms. So um,
sure.
then maybe that's being overly optimistic, but it shouldn't be ruled out as a possibility, I guess, either.
Well, let's not forget that Porsche were heavily involved in trying to, let's say, influence what the next regulations would look like in
It's true.
prototype racing, moving over to this single formula, away from what we see right now, where you have really two different regulation sets racing on track at the same time in the same class. They were very much in favor of this unified platform beyond 2030. So, talking things that are going to be 5 years from now, maybe we'll see them back in this championship sooner than later.
Yeah.
I have seen the online response to this was pretty damn negative, and I
Yeah.
understand it from a certain standpoint. Of course, this is a manufacturer that has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans more than anybody else. This is a manufacturer who, when they left the WEC in 2017 from the LMP1 class, pretty much spelled the end of the LMP1 class. I mean, it never bounced back to the heights that it had before, after Porsche had left. I do think that the response here isn't comparable because you're talking about a championship in a class that has Genesis, McLaren, Ford all coming in the next 2 seasons.
Hmm.
Um, on the other hand, I would say that it's worth noting that none of these manufacturers are a guarantee, and I certainly hope that the powers above, the sanctioning bodies, keep that in mind when making decisions that influence the future of these classes.
Yeah.
So
There, there, do we jump to the question? Do we jump to chat now? And
yeah, I'm gonna jump to the
because
chat
there's
because I see a couple of good
yeah,
questions right off the bat relating to
yeah,
this. We must discuss how the trickle down effect this will have in the driver market.
yeah.
Absolutely. Um, you're talking about a huge number of Porsche drivers right now that might be off to different pastures. Um, you know, I always kick Audi for the ramifications that them ending their hypercar program had on their factory driver market. And of course, Audi also can customer racing. They can their GT3 program. So it's not really, they threw all their eggs in the F1 basket, really.
Hmm.
Um, but that being said, we've already heard rumors that some of their drivers from the 963 program might be off to McLaren. Um, we had actually heard that before this program was officially confirmed canceled. Um, Maybe we start to hear more things like that next year. I do know that some of those drivers are, of course, still contracted drivers with Porsche. They'll be continuing next year in GT3 roles. Maybe some of them will go over to racing in IMSA. Um, but beyond that, I certainly think that could play an interesting role in where their drivers decide to spend their time.
Yeah, and if you're a program like Genesis or something like that as well, that have yet to, announce more drivers for that program, you have to be licking your lips right now. Look, and because there could be a lot more potential, very experienced, very winning drivers that could be hitting the open market shortly. So yeah, that's driver market, and we could have a proper sports car driver silly season this off season. And when is what's the final race of the WEC season? Is it 2 weeks.
Uh, Good question. I didn't
Yeah.
even look at it yet.
I feel like it's a
Um,
couple weeks after Petit, but it
well,
could
it's
be.
historically in November.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe it's
Someone can probably
three
help us
weeks
out.
out.
I could look it up, but wanted to go back to questions from earlier in the episode while you look that up. 2026 Rolex 24 entry wishes. I have two. First, a second. This is from the person in the chat. Second, Aston Martin Valkyrie, a green 007. Um, Wait, is that all one? I'm trying to. A green 007 Valkyrie? Is that.
Yeah, that seems like be the one entry.
I would like to see a second Valkyrie at Daytona.
Yeah.
To sort of echo off of that, because the WEC season doesn't start for over a month after that. So I always sort of wonder about the possibility of bringing that WEC entry over. Now, if you're the heart of racing, you don't want to bring that car to Daytona and then trash it in the 24-hour race and then be scrambling to have a car ready for the WEC opener at Qatar. So I could see why they wouldn't do it. But I'd love to see something like that. Off bat, another entry I'd like to see. I mean, like how wild am I able to go? I'd love to see a Ferrari 499P in the GTP class. I'd love to see Toyota bring a car over. These are some of the heavy hitters in the global hypercar scene, some of which already have manufacturer representation over in IMSA in, say, the GT4 class or the GS class in Pilot Challenge in
Yep.
TCR that we just don't see racing in the WeatherTech Championship right now, but really shouldn't be a whole lot preventing them from doing it, especially now that all of those cars would have gone through the wind shear wind tunnel for homologation. So, a couple prototypes I'd like to see for sure.
Yeah, I could say a couple of maybe on the GT side that I think would be fun to see. We kind of got a taste of this last year with the TF supported Corvette entry, the WeatherTech entry that we saw in the race. Of course, Connor Zilic, Shane Van Gisbergen, who else was Scotty Mack in
Scott
that car?
McLaughlin. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So you get a pretty some of the all-star type cars would be cool. Hopefully we see maybe a Corvette entry like that they can utilize some of their their NASCAR star power and bring in some star power from other series as well, to showcase that talent. It's kind of in the off season for a lot of racing championships. So that could work nicely. We usually get a lot of IndyCar stars as well. So that would be cool. Maybe something similar from Ford. We've heard rumblings of, a Roush, being interested in, or RFK as it's now called, potentially returning in some, or coming to IMSA in some capacity. And we've historically seen Ford drivers participate in the Michelin Pilot Challenge race at Daytona, so that could be a cool one to see as well. So maybe a couple of entries like that on the GTD side, or GTD Pro, pardon me, where you can really showcase some racing talent from other series, and maybe bring in some new fans as well. And it has been pointed out. I checked this as well. November 8th as well. Thanks, Zero, for highlighting that, is when the WEC finale is. So a little bit over a month, or a little bit under, I guess, a month after the IMSA season finale.
Yep. Tip my hat for getting that one out to us. Yeah, I agree with you. We do need some of those wild card entries where we pull in some drivers from other series. I would love to see Ford, even if it's a team representing Ford, pull in some drivers from NASCAR, pull in some drivers from supercars. Let me tell you,
Yeah,
I said on the watch party on Saturday that the Bathurst finish was probably not going to be that exciting, and boy, was I wrong. And if you haven't gotten the chance to catch up on the extended highlights from that race, it's about an hour long, but it's well worth a watch. At least
I have
the
heard.
laps like 60 to 70 run, and then the last 20 laps worth your time.
Yeah.
Um, Something
Maybe
like that though. Get some eyes on the
Super
series.
GT.
Yeah, Super GT. We've had some drivers come over from there already, but really use the Rolex as an opportunity to get eyes on the series and then
Yeah.
carry that momentum through the rest of the season. The Rolex is a great chance to show people what IMSA racing is all about. It's always been a very exciting race, especially at the finish. Um, what better opportunity to get more people to tune in?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Question slash point two from Wild Stallion. I think we need to recognize the great year of the BMW M4 GT3. Endurance wins of the Dubai 24 Bathurst 12-hour, Paul Ricard 6-hour, Nürburgring 24, Watkins Glen 6-hour, Battle on the Bricks for IMSA, Road America Petit Le Mans and Suzuka 10-hour, and they're also favorites to win the Indy 8-hour coming up. Yeah, definitely BMW has invested a ton of resources into their customer racing programs recently. Not very recently, but in the recent years. And we're seeing a lot of that pay off. I already talked about the transition, the pickup that they had from WRT or from Audi with Team WRT, and they're contributing a lot of that success internationally as well. So yeah, we talk about cars of the year in our awards show in late
Yeah,
December.
true.
Maybe we'll have to bring that one up.
And another thing with the M4 is there was an Evo that was put on that car at the beginning of this year as well. So all of this has been done with, some upgrades to the car, which it can be hard to get a handle on that car very quickly and be able to translate that into the success that they've already seen. So, yeah, well done.
Yep. Going back to a question about Petit Le Mans crowd sizes, hearing how long it takes to get in on Saturday morning has deterred me for sure. They know they will have a huge crowd and still over an hour to get in. Um, yeah, unfortunately, Road Atlanta suffers the same issue that tracks like Sebring suffer from, where there's really one road in and one road out.
Yeah.
If you look at a satellite map view of Road Atlanta, there's not really a north entrance and a south entrance. It's you're driving on the same road that everybody else is. Now, I have heard people complain that they weren't as efficient as they could have been getting people actually into the parking lots and parked. I had an issue at Sebring this year getting into that track on the race day morning. And I saw even on Friday at Petit Le Mans this year, the traffic getting in even on a Friday was pretty hectic. So, yeah, I don't know how much I can say about that specifically, but it is just one of those tracks that unfortunately is limited a bit by design.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it all means that sports car racing is healthy, right? Like there was a comment earlier for Mr. Waffles, packed grid walk equals healthy sports car series. This is
Yep.
kind of just like a trickle down effect of, having a ton of fans at the track. There's going to be more traffic, and yeah, maybe there's some better ways that tracks can look at trying to handle that. But for the most part, these are problems that are a little bit unprecedented for a lot of these tracks. They don't usually see crowds this big, so can be a challenge logistically to deal with that, and we can see a little bit of a little bit of a delay before some of those problems are sorted out. Like hopefully next year they'll be able to apply some lessons learned from this year and make it a bit better to get into the track and remove some of that hesitation.
Yeah. If you were Logan Sargent, what would you do next year? IMSA, WEC, maybe ELMS, and which class? I suppose biased a bit because I'm a sports car racing fan, and I would say maybe I would choose sports car racing over something like IndyCar. But I think he kind of sits nice. Let's restart that. I think he sits nicely in an LMP2 car as he's been doing with the ladder races in IMSA this year. If he wants to do that, he's been a very strong driver for PR1 in the two races he has run. if I'm a driver like him, I want to set myself up to land a factory hypercar or GTP seat. I think
Yep.
that's the place to be right now. Um, so which seat gives you the best chance of doing that? I don't know. I think IMSA or ELMS LMP2 would either one would really be fine if he wants to stay US based. Of course, he's born and raised in Florida. Then IMSA would be better for that. But I guess the ELMS is not, doing a very taxing schedule, so he could just fly out to
That's
those
true.
races as well, or maybe a little bit of both. But I think the LMP2 car is a good sort of middle ground from the cars that he's used to. It's the lightest cars that we have racing in IMSA right now and over in the ELMS. And if he's able to continue success over there, maybe he lands the eyes of a hypercar manufacturer who wants to sign him. Of course, he was signed as a development driver for Genesis, but ultimately backed away from that deal for reasons I'm not sure of. But that's what I'd be doing. There's going to be a ton of driver openings over the next few years from McLaren,
Yep.
Ford, Genesis to jump up to a legitimately competitive chance to win Le Mans overall, and that's where I would want to be.
Yep. I echo that exactly. LMP2, good platform to develop. He's done very, very, very limited. He has very, very limited prototype experience. So LMP2 is a great way to do that and to prove yourself as well. Really, really properly put yourself on the radar for some factory programs.
Yep. Did Porsche ever say why they stopped fielding the 911 in GTD Pro for the endurance race? Oh, that 911 in GTD Pro. Which one are we
The
talking
orange
about here?
one. It was only on at the Rolex, so it may have just been a one-off
Oh, we're
Rolex
talking about
entry.
Manti.
No,
What?
no,
What?
this is I think they're talking about the Proton Porsche, right? That ran in GTD
Oh,
Pro.
oh, oh. Yeah.
It was like the
Didn't
black
even
and
read the
orange
start of
one.
the. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't even read the
Yeah.
start of the thing. Yeah, Proton. Um, yeah, because that was a Daytona only entry, right?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't remember if they were initially announced as a Michelin Endurance Cup. I mean, if they were initially announced as a Michelin Endurance Cup entry and only did the Rolex, there's a chance that they never intended to do the rest of the Michelin Endurance Cup as well. We've definitely seen that happen before, where teams say they're going to stick around and don't. Um, could also, you know, yeah, who really knows? But it could have been money related if they had a funding source that kind of fell out.
Well, to answer the question, I don't know. I didn't see
Yeah,
if they ever formally said why.
yeah.
Um, let's see if there's anything else that I had missed here. Um, it would be weird if the LMGT3 Porsches weren't to be allowed. I doubt it. Wonder what will happen to some of the hypercar drivers. Yeah, of course, we already touched on that latter point. I think some of them are heading towards McLaren and Genesis by the sound of things. And yeah, I agree. I know there's been, I'll say, some misconceptions thrown around that, oh, if you don't race in hypercar, you're not allowed to race in LMGT3. We simply don't see that. Mercedes is racing in the LMGT3 class right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I know some people say, oh, well, when the SC63 left hypercar, they weren't allowed to race in GT anymore. And again, that's not true. It was just the fact that Iron Lynx went over to racing Mercedes instead. So, yeah, I don't see any concerns with those LMGT3 911s being on the grid next year.
Yep.
Uh, Lambo left GT3 and Hypercar left. Estra probably be put to SRO.
Oh.
Could see maybe Vantor helping out on endurance races in IMSA next year. Maybe Estra too. Um, yeah, I guess that's what makes most sense, right? If seeing Estra and Vantor, especially Vantor, because he mentioned he is contracted with Porsche through next season,
Yeah.
continuing his role and coming over and supporting some of those longer IMSA enduros.
I'll tell you a Porsche driver that is not a hypercar driver right now, but yeah, could be interesting to see if he maybe jumps to a different manufacturer is Lauren Heinrich. You know,
Yep.
he's been t- talking, questioned on it a fair bit recently. You know, he had that 963 test, and if he doesn't get an opportunity in IMSA before too long, do you see him maybe jump over to WRT and go with BMW and be able to have the flexibility to go either side of the pond and compete at Le Mans? Is that something that would be appealing to him? That could be like a really interesting development, because we've seen how Heinrich has developed in recent years. He'd be a very highly sought after driver on the market.
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot in past episodes, and I think it brings up the point of if you are signing drivers to development programs, which is Lauren Heinrich officially a Porsche works driver?
I would assume he's a full factory driver now,
Okay.
and not just development.
You have to have a place for these drivers to go.
Yeah.
So if the goal for them is to go prototype racing, because we saw a lot of this with what happened to Audi drivers as well. If you don't have a place for them to go, they're not going to stick around.
Yep.
Some of them were leaving before they were even fully out of GT3 racing. Nico Muller was confirmed to their hypercar program, and then, of course, went over to go race in some other opportunities from Porsche and Peugeot. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see what the impact of them leaving the WEC and hypercar class means, but we'll see.
Like, it could be a serious trickle down effect, even more than we've touched on already.
Yeah. Do you think Penske will go with Ford in IMSA and the WEC? Well, not the WEC by the sound of things, because it's going to be an in-house program from Ford, starting in 2027 in the WEC. Over at IMSA, they said it's going to be an in-house team. I presume that only means in the WEC, because they haven't formally announced an IMSA program yet. So maybe we see Penske. I know it was brought up that Penske might be going with Ford and IMSA.
Who's the chassis on the Ford?
Multimatic.
Okay.
Oh, no. Is it? No.
That's what I was wondering. Like that, if it is Multimatic, which I don't think it is. It
not.
Orica?
It's yeah. I think it is Orica.
Because if it was Multimatic, that seems like
Orica.
it would be
It's Orica.
Okay. I was gonna say that could be a pretty natural fit, seeing as they have, they're running their GTD Pro program already, but maybe that wouldn't be so likely. I don't think Multimatic would want to run an Orica chassis.
Let's see.
We have a super chat from
We
Zero.
do have a super chat. I was going down towards that, but I think that might be the next question I have here. First of all, thank you for the super chat. I'm not a fan of the 2-car mandate. I just don't like rules like this that exclude the smaller teams. 100% agree. We talked about that in the episode where it was formally confirmed a while back now. But yeah, I've been pretty against it from day one. I do understand parts of the reasons why they push towards it. But I think at this point, it's starting to do more damage than it's done good. Yeah. And do I think they're going to reverse it? No. But
as long as they have a steady stream of manufacturers that are interested in joining, then it's probably not going to make a big impact. They're probably not going to change it.
A couple of people were floating entries that they would like to see at Daytona. Fly some of the V8 Supercar Ford drivers over for a special Mustang entry. Yep, agree with that. Throw some of the NASCAR guys in there. Sargent confirmed that he's focusing on sports cars going forward. So there you go. That's the same path I would be taking as well. Heinrich to BMW would be too OP. Hey.
WRT.
Those are the moves you got to look at. If you're looking at the driver market right now and the implications that these drivers might have from Porsche leaving the hypercar class, then it's going to be a wide open market, especially going into 2027.
Yep. BMW has not been shy to turn over some of their driver lineups as well. So could see some big movement there.
Yeah. And final question I'll hit on this episode, because we're getting very close to 2 hours.
Yep.
Who would you say the hottest free agent driver for 26 is where GTP is concerned? Ooh. Well, here's the problem: is I don't know. I don't have a full list of what drivers are on the market for 2026, so I gotta
usually driver contracts aren't really publicly known information.
Well, sometimes, yeah, sometimes they are. Sometimes they're more
Yeah.
vague. Free agent going into next year though for GTP.
Or maybe somebody that you could see jumping up to the GTP ranks as well, sort of in that Lauren Heinrich vein.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't really see Heinrich jumping up next year, to be honest with you. If we're talking specifically about him,
yeah,
I just don't know what seats would be available for him right now for 2026, at least in GTP. You know what? I'm going to come back to that question on a rainy day, which it is actually raining outside right now. So
I'll say one that we talked about earlier, Grosjean is an interesting.
You know what? There
one.
You go. There
you
got
to look at like those Lamborghini drivers. Where could Eduardo Mortara land? Kvyat. Does Kvyat seriously look at staying in sports car racing? Or do they kind of transition maybe to a different series like ELMS or something like that? Those ones are all going to be interesting ones to follow. We've already talked about kind of the Porsche drivers as well. I mean, we don't really know who could become available there, but anybody who becomes available from the 963 from a 963 is going to be going to be keeping an eye on that. You still have guys that are floating around there that have experience in this top level of equipment. A guy like Dane Cameron, who just won.
Yep.
Wasn't it Dane Cameron just won? It's like his 5th different IMSA championship that he just won with the LMP2 crown that AO Racing won this past weekend. So, could you see somebody like that move? Yeah, there's a lot. And again, it's difficult to answer that question not knowing the full, who's going to be available and who is available.
Yeah, that's the biggest hurdle is I don't know what contracts look like going into next year without researching ahead of time. I do like the Grosjean call, though. I don't know if he's contracted for anything in 26 right now. But as I said earlier, I think you can look at other drivers from that program. I think Mortara, he's, I think, equally well suited in GT machinery. He has a long GT racing history, so I could see him going back there. Grosjean, with that open wheel background, I think in the pace that he's put up with the SC63, he seems like he's consistently been the fastest driver over in IMSA in that car, and of course was the 3rd fastest driver at Petit Le Mans if you're looking at averages. So I'd love to see him land somewhere, as I said earlier in the episode, but you're Googling contracts, aren't you?
No, I'm Googling the age of Jordan Pepper.
Okay.
Because he's 29, so still, kind of maybe at his point, at that point in his career, he's had a lot of success, and could you see him maybe try and jump to, even if it's not an IMSA, if it's in the WEC or something like that, kind of a top level program? That could be one. I was thinking, like Lamborghini comes to mind here, of course. But if they are looking to expand their GTD Pro presence in IMSA, a driver like Mortara would be
Yeah.
I think you'd have to think is like sort of top of minds that you could anchor a GTD Pro lineup with. So same with a guy like Pepper, but
Yeah.
we
Final
got one
question,
we
because
got
it's a
one
super.
more.
Oh, it was a super chat that was retracted. But
Ooh.
I saw it. It was it was essentially, does if your Lamborghini, does Team RLL running a program in GTD Pro next year make sense? And to that I'd say I think depends how invested Lamborghini ultimately is in GT racing right now,
Yeah.
or in customer racing more specifically. But I do think with them leaving the GTP class, having that representation in pro racing still, stateside in sports car racing, would still suit them very well. And if RLL wants to foot a program like that, they have a very long history in GT racing, significantly more than they do racing prototypes, and they've
Yep.
had a very successful history racing GT cars as well. So
Yeah.
I think it would be a good call if they wanted to do it. As you said, we've got some drivers right now who would be a good fit for that program as well. And
And you have a Temerario with Lamborghini that they're going to be trying to push and encourage, prove
yeah,
to the world that that's a good car for customer racing. Try and bring Lamborghini into the next generation of those GT3 spec cars. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for Lamborghini to expand their GT racing a bit. So
yeah. All right, and I'll round it all off with this from Kevin Samp. Said you could go for 3 hours. I know I have said it before. The best sports car racing podcast out there, and one I look forward to the most now. Well, first of all, thank you very much. We're in a competitive space for sports car racing podcasts. A lot of
true.
quality shows going around here. So very much appreciated that you enjoy tuning into this one. And I'll say that for everybody as well. This being the 100th episode, it's a bit of a passion project for me. You've joined me for the past 50 so episodes now. And we can sit here, do some partially uninformed rambling for over 2 hours now, and people tune into it. And to me, that's why I keep doing this thing. So I'll leave it at that. I saw you had a rain day topic on there as well. I will keep track of that, and we'll answer that on another episode when we have more time to discuss.
Good off-season topic right there. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got more coming. I did want to try to invite some special guests onto this episode, with it being the 100th one. We were trying to work some connections there to get people on. Unfortunately, we had to move over to a Monday episode this week. Going to be a busy off season for you, getting back into curling season. So
Oh yeah.
we will be moving the show around a little bit. It won't be on our usual Thursday date we've been rolling with. So we'll work something out. We'll figure out when we're going to do this, but expect us to be here at 8 p.m. Eastern. And I'll leave it at that for now. We'll try to get some people on in the off season. Got a lot of fun things planned. And I want to thank you again for tuning into this episode, for making it a very fun, special one. Any closing thoughts from you, man?
Nope. I can't wait for the Asian Le Mans series to start up and us see the
That's right.
SC63 on the grid there.
Yeah, we'll be on the grid. We'll be racing the SC63. Hope to see you all there. Hope to see you soon for another episode of the Rain Race Podcast. Take care.